All right, why don't we start off with this? The idea of the U.S. government taking a stake in Intel, basically in exchange for the CHIPS Act funding. What's your view on that as someone who has run a publicly traded company?
Well, I think the important thing here is the president has talked about kind of the big vision is let's win the race, the AI race. That's the strategic objective. And I can see the government lining up behind that and getting it really invested in that and exercising so-called state capitalism. The problem with, say, a 15% stake in Intel is, yes, you can help the stock price. It's a nice thing to do, but it doesn't help Intel compete in the sense that you're providing funds for them to continue to invest. 15% on revenues for NVIDIA and others, also interesting, but how does that help win the race for AI? And I think that's the key thing. I think the president has an opportunity to make this the Trump moonshot, win the race for AI. But, some of these tactics may be getting in the way. I think they're still finding their way through this. But hopefully the strategy will be refined and will be more focused.
All right, so Carlos, I want to go back to a phrase that you said. You said state capitalism. Some people call it state-guided capitalism.
Yeah.
You don't seem to have an issue with that part. You don't think that it's actually helping competition. But I want to go back to that. As someone, again, who ran a publicly traded company and also was in the administration, you were the Commerce Secretary. Do you have any issues with the idea of state-guided capitalism and what that means for the public markets and investors?
Yeah, there's a lot of forms of state-guided capitalism. I think the term is a little bit misleading. You can go into countries like France and Brazil where the state intervention in the economy is part of the strategy, it's part of the model. The state should run airlines and should run electricity and should run a lot of things. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I hope that's not. That's what Mondami is talking about in New York. That's a very different model.
Carlos,
here we're talking.
We don't want to get too political. We just want to focus on just what this could mean for the investor class and also for governance of companies. I mean, the idea of the U.S. government taking a stake in a company and then the president actually having a vested interest because his administration made the decision to take that stake. How does that impact governance? How do you think that could potentially impact investor confidence?
Well, look, that's the downside. And you're saying not get political. The problem is that the concept of state-run capitalism or state intervention is political. But look, if the government can help companies win the AI race, which is more than just NVIDIA, it's mining, it's energy, and focus on that and put money and attention into that, that will work. Now, the tactics of getting on boards and starting to manage those companies and get into the detail of who runs it and who doesn't and get into the micromanaging, that could be a problem. But if there is discipline and if there's a discipline to stay on strategy, this could be a big deal. But, things like the formula of Coca-Cola, that's interesting. But I think, though, it's pretty small potatoes compared to what we're talking about here.
Okay.
So, the Secretary of Commerce was talking about the government taking a stake in these things and getting some money for exports. That's very transactional. I think this is a time for a bigger idea, a bigger strategy, a bigger vision.
Okay.
And the president's onto that.
All right, so Carlos, you're in favor of state-guided capitalism in limited ways. Is there another sector where you think it may make sense? We've already seen the president make some pushes when it comes to pharmaceuticals. Our Angelica Peoples doing some great reporting on pharma companies reshoring here to the U.S. Is there another area where you think it just makes sense and you think it could help the United States maintain its advantage economically, defensively, technologically, whichever way?
Look, I'm in favor of winning the race for AI, and the government can help. Pharmaceuticals is one to watch because there's a lot going on. There's the tariff threat of 100%. There's the European Union, and this will intersect with the negotiations with the European Union. Then the president's talked about equalizing prices, where the prices overseas will be the same as the prices in the U.S. so that we're not subsidizing. That can get very complex, and I can see a situation where the president feels like the government has to take more of more involvement in the pharmaceutical sector. I hope not. But for now, I would be very happy if we focused on the concept of win the race for AI and have the government get involved and have the government do whatever they can to help companies compete and win.